some people have talked about the structure of the federation. And right now you look at the budget, and obviously, just as it has been historically, even though maybe the gap is reducing a little bit, recurrent is still substantially higher than capital at the federal level. Now, given that government has been having this conversation, even within the National Assembly, about how do we reduce the cost of governance, in your view, given the kind of paucity of funds that we have in the country at the moment, should federal funds be allocated to essentially what are local grassroots projects for federal lawmakers?
I don't think so. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I still think that we should hold those at the state level accountable to our people, because they are closer to the people. Now, the National Assembly, they might have, I've listened to their arguments, but if you take the argument in isolation from what exists, because you still have state assemblies that have constituency projects, and these projects are domiciled within those localities. Now, you still have the councillors who operate at the local government level. They still operate in the same, these projects are still going to be domiciled at those localities. So until we see a demarcation between what a local government or a state government should be doing and then what federal government should be doing, we will still come back to this issue. And then again, I still think that at the federal level, we ought to, I think, educate the populace on what are the deliverables we expect from those who represent us. Because when you are
at the federal level?
Yes, at the federal level. Because when you are at the National Assembly, you should be discussing national issues, not. It comes down to locality, but it's more of national integration, national planning, and all.
Let me ask you. Of course, these federal lawmakers still represent their constituencies, and so if federal funds, in your view, should not be applied to the grassroots, and that essentially councillors, local government chairmen, state governors, commissioners, and other officials at that level should be applying their resources to the grassroots, then shouldn't there be some sort of a linkage created between the National Assembly and the states that they come from, so that they can offer advice to state governors and local government chairmen and all of these other officials that are relevant to grassroots development, to be able to guide, kind of the allocation of projects?
Yeah, see, it's not like federal projects or federal allocations should not go to those kinds of projects. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. But it will be focused more on things that are a bit, like we have federal roads. It's not the roads in Aba, in Asa Road and all of that that the federal government should be doing. There are roads that link cities,
like that Aba Port Harcourt, for example.
So that's the thing. So if you now begin to take projects like a road inside Aba to be a project that will come to national because it's your constituency. See, that means we're putting a higher number on as the denominator in an improper fraction. So what I'm trying to say here is, if we have a confluence where discussions are put out there for those at the local level to actually hold their people accountable, what is happening now, the effect won't be much, because everybody is now holding on to their representatives. What are you even doing for us? Because that's actually what leads to this kind of ambitious pursuit for projects coming to your locality. The empowerment programs that the National Assembly members all go into. Because their people are now beginning to ask them. Everybody now expects projects from National Assembly members. They are actually lawmakers. They are not to come and build houses and all of that for their people. So there has to be a lot of education. And then with that education or information dissemination within the locality, so that they will know what to expect from their National Assembly
interestingly,
members.
When you hear the conversation that goes on, even on the street level or even in the media, what it's usually tabled as is, this is Buhari versus Saraki, or this is executive versus legislature, or this is APC versus New PDP. But in the end, it's the Nigerian that suffers the consequence of these purported battles. I want to ask you, when you look at some of the very critical projects, Mambila hydropower, for example, 3,050 megawatts, the counterpart funding is now cut. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, major artery, has been cut. What is it that the Nigerian should or can do in this situation to say, look, this is, I mean, it can't continue like this?
I always say things like this, that when we vote for people in executive, we vote for people that will support the nation. We vote for people that will allocate, who provide leadership for us as a country. But when we vote for our legislators, we are actually voting for those who hold the destiny of a nation in their hands. See, a lot of people, the day of election, they are more interested, they want to know who's going to be president, who's going to be the governor. They don't pay attention they pay attention on who will be their representative. These are things that people just overlook. We need to get our people to understand that the role that these people are supposed to be playing in our nation is very critical. And if we do that, we won't allow just anybody to represent any constituency. Because the mentality of the person will actually show when the person goes to represent you. So we need to get our people to understand that those who represent at the assemblies, both national and state assemblies, are even more important than those who represent us as governors or the executive arm of government. Because, I mean, look at where we are today. You can imagine an insertion of that magnitude, over 6,000 projects, new projects.
578 billion, I believe it is.
Yeah, and then you're looking at critical projects. Okay, over 60,000 people living with HIV/AIDS in our nation will not have antiretroviral drugs just because this has happened, unless the supplementary budget, of course, like the president said, is being passed right on time. So these are things we'll play with that we should now begin to rethink as a people. Who are those who are going to be standing out there to represent us? And these questions are key, and this education is quite important.
Let me ask you, do you think that there's some level of intentionality behind the selection of projects that have been cut? Because I've looked at, for example, there was a cut in the takeoff grant for the Maritime University in Delta. And I know that is a focal point of what has brought some level of stability to the Niger Delta. If that's cut now, could that create a kind of a crisis in the Niger Delta between agitators and the federal government by what has now happened in the National Assembly?
See, you can't take those kind of beliefs out of what is actually going on right now. Because I mean, I have looked at it critically. I have done deep thinking to understand why some of these projects will actually be tinkered with by the National Assembly. I still haven't been able to find an explanation. I wish the National Assembly member, will still come to explain to Nigerians why they did what they did. For me, any of those projects that they touched actually touched the vein of development in this nation.
No, but in fairness, though, if you look at the conversations that have been had, a lot of people point to the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari and said, look, has he worked effectively with the National Assembly? You have situations that have arisen where, the National Assembly calls an official to come and answer questions on maybe security situation in the country. They fail to appear, repeatedly, for example.
Yeah.
You have other situations where there are deadlocks over various conversations that take place. Do you think the executive has handled that relationship with enough wisdom to be able to facilitate things like, a budget?
Yeah, see, these are things you always see in a presidential system, presidential system, governance. If you're not careful, you come to a point where it's not the National Assembly that is running the nation. So leadership, everybody's where your right stops. That demarcation must be clear. So it comes back to the fact where we all have to still go back to the Supreme Court to see, or go back to Supreme Court to find out where does this stop?
Why do you think the executive over time, not just this administration but previous ones, have been reticent to take that step and get this clarification in court?
I mean, it's left for them to come and explain that, but I think it's a step that was worth taking. I mean, let's put a closure to this, because this back and forth will continue. And then, like I said, you know, we are not only going to be depending, we're also going to be borrowing, and we're looking at borrowing internationally to fund the budget deficit. So if you're going outside to borrow, the people who are looking at you're coming to borrow from someone who is not even sure that maybe tomorrow the National Assembly can wake up and say, don't pay back anybody, and then make the law and just hit the gavel and that's it. So if we must be able to draw the line and then just know the borders and then work with it, because no nation can grow the way we're going.